All right. Welcome, my friends, to another episode of the Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A here on the Red Delta Project YouTube channel. We're taking a fundamental approach to diet and exercise to give you more power, control, and freedom over your healthy lifestyle, which results in far better results that actually last. As always, I'm Matt Schifferly from the Red Delta Project, and today's episode is sponsored by the Red Delta Project Library and the latest addition to it, of course, which is my book, Progressive and Weighted Calisthenics. If you ever came to me and you were like, Matt, all I care about is building muscle and strength with bodyweight training, the simplest, most straightforward, easiest to execute exercises and programs, what do I do? That's the book that you want. That's down below, as well as all of the other books in the Grind Style Calisthenics series, like the Grind Style Calisthenics Manual, Overcoming Isometrics, Suspension Calisthenics as well. So check those out all down below. PDF, Kindle, and paperback formats are available. And thank you very much for your support. So I know this is a little bit of a late episode. My weekends have just been absolutely chaos over the past couple of weeks. I know I wasn't able to get to this last week. I was in the mountains with practically no internet service. And this week I was at a Taekwondo seminar all day. But I figure, you know what? Let's still make this happen. Even though this is getting in later than usual, we'll probably get some new folks in on the comment section, but better to get it in than to half-ass it, as I always say. So today's topic is all about 5 workout strategies when you're building muscle and strength. Because it's very easy to overthink the programming with these things. Like, okay, what's the sets and what's the reps and what's the order and what's way should I be facing and what's my astrological sign and carry the 2 and how, divide by pi. And you can really overthink programming. But when it really boils down to what is an effective workout if we want to stimulate the advancement of strength and muscle, basically, we just got to bomb the mother living hell out of the muscles. But we got to make sure that we're smart about it, because there's a lot of ways we can make ourselves exhausted and drive ourselves into the ground when we're working ourselves to death. I could just say, fine, go do 1,000 burpees. Will that drive you into the ground? Will that make you exhausted? Will you be peeling yourself off the floor because your arms are so tired? Absolutely. Will that be my best choice for building muscle and strength? Absolutely not. So we want to make sure we're getting 2 fundamental stimuli. One is we want to make sure that the muscles at some point in the workout are producing a very high level of tension for strength. So we're not doing something that's light. In other words, the classic example I always give is when people say, Matt, can you do 100 push-ups? I'm like, dear God, why would I ever do push-ups that are that easy? If you walked into a gym and we're doing 100 reps with like 5-pound dumbbells, people would be like, what the hell are you doing? Lift heavier weights. You're not going to get strong with that. And yet for some reason, when it comes to bodyweight training, we're like, yeah, I do 1,000 crunches and 1,000,000 push-ups every day. And it's like, it's the same thing. It's fundamentally the same thing. You're exposing your body to the same stimulus. So we want heavy ass training. Usually I'm recommending folks stay under 10 repetitions. If you can do an exercise for more than 10 repetitions, it's too easy. It's got to be harder. Sure, it's good for a warm-up set or for other things, which we'll get into in a second, but we want to train heavy. We just simply need that high amount of tension. And the second stimulus we're trying to go for, more for the hypertrophy side, is we want to bring the muscles to a very high state of fatigue. And both of these things are not necessarily counterproductive, but typically higher states of fatigue are done with, quote, lighter loads where you can really feel that muscle burning and you feel like, oh my gosh, I feel like my arms are going to fall off, and you keep pushing forward. When you go heavy, it's like, let's say you're doing a 5 rep set. On that 5th one, you're like, okay, I got 5, but there's no way in hell I'm getting 6. It's just too much intensity. But when it comes to lighter training, like I used to have a great training style with some friends of mine back in the day, we used to challenge each other. Can you do this exercise for more than a minute? And at 45 seconds, you felt like your muscles were just going to spontaneously combust. And you're like, keep pushing, keep pushing. You feel like you're absolutely dying and your friend is screaming in your ear. You've got at least 5 more in the tank, and you just find a way to get more reps. You're not going to do that with heavy training. But the research now is more suggesting that that is a bit more reliable for creating that hypertrophic response in many cases. So we want both in the same workout. And these strategies are how you can get both. It's not just heavy, it's not just endurance training, it's both at the same time. And this way we theoretically can at least stand the best chance of building muscle and strength and not feel like we're compromising ourselves in that way. A couple of people coming on in. Jen Zim, Instant Coaching, good to see you. Albert Einstein, good to see you, my friend. Back from the dead, I see. By the way, that whole space-time continuum thing, is that still real? I've been falling down the rabbit hole of many YouTube channels these days talking about how you can't travel faster than the speed of light and things, and it still doesn't make very much sense to me. But you, Matt, hope all is well. Looking forward to the stream. Thank you very much, Albert. So let's jump right on in. So the first one that I'm a big fan of, and this one I use with a lot of my bodyweight training clients who are like, I just want to build muscle and strength, will typically take one workout out of the week if I'm seeing them 2 or 3 times, and we will do a classic bodybuilding pre-exhaust workout. And what we do with this is we'll set up a set of suspension straps, and we'll do it just exactly like old school bodybuilders. Remember, with the addition of suspension straps and potentially maybe some weighted or progressive calisthenics, we should be able to take any sort of bodybuilding programming and match it set for set and rep for rep with calisthenics. Should be no different, exactly the same. The type of exercise might be a little bit different, but we're subjecting the body to the exact same stimuli. And one of the classic ways of doing this is with suspension straps for pre-exhaust work. So let me give you an example of this. So I'll give my friend, like, okay, push chain, for example, chest, shoulders, triceps. So I'll have them do suspension chest flies, and then we'll go over to the stall bars and they'll do tricep extensions on the stall bars where they grab onto a bar and their elbow touches the wall or the bars underneath and then back on up. Really murders the triceps. And I'm usually getting around, 10, 12 repetitions, kind of that classic hypertrophy zone that's kind of fallen out of favor these days, but we're kind of going for that. We're trying to burn out the muscles. And then I'll give them something for their shoulders, like flexion, shoulder flexion on the suspension straps or something like that. And we'll get about 2 or 3 sets. Now, the goal with these pre-exhaust is to take each individual muscle in the chain and not isolate. Of course, we're always trying to integrate, but you're trying to just get that muscle working pretty good. And on a scale of 1 to 10 for fatigue, you're trying to get it to like a 7-ish as far as, so it's feeling like, yeah, I've worked the muscle pretty good. I feel like it's a typical workout kind of thing. 2 to 3 sets usually hits you pretty good. Work with a good amount of intensity. Usually when folks are starting with this, I'm like, okay, start wherever you like, and then I'll have them lift heavier for the second and maybe third sets. So we're still subjecting the muscles to a pretty good amount of tension on that. And then what I'll have them do is after that, so their muscles are, quote, pre-fatigued, then we'll do our compound stuff. So usually people are going the opposite, where they'll do dips and push-ups and handstand push-ups and stuff, and then they'll finish off with chest flies or tricep extension stuff. Now you're reversing it. And this is a very good strategy if you are finding yourself in the case where I usually train pretty heavy, but I just have a hard time pushing the muscles to a very high state of fatigue, which, yeah, if you train very heavy all the time, it is very hard to do that. Because once your muscles are no longer it doesn't take much for them to drop below the ability to lift that heavy, even though they're really not that fatigued. So this gives you the opportunity to really push the fatigue level because you're going to have the pre-fatigue. So your muscles, when you get to the dips, they're already going to be fairly shot. So keep in mind that you're not going to get as many dips or weighted dips or push-ups or whatever typical compound movement you do that you do on a regular basis. So my friend, for example, the other day, usually gets 15 dips. He got like 6. I think his best was like 8. So it's going to be lower. And that's the entire point. If your sets are usually like they would be if your muscles were fresh, you didn't push nearly as hard during the pre-exhaust phase. But that's the whole point, is we're trying to push the muscles to a higher state of fatigue than normal. Because usually the level we stop working a muscle at a fatigue point is somewhat habitual. We like to tell ourselves, oh, I took it to failure. Oh, it's all I had in my muscles. Generally, that's not the case. Generally, we can always push our muscles to a much higher state of fatigue than we're conditioned with. It's just that's what we're used to. So we've kind of trained ourselves to always stop at that level of fatigue. So strategies like this help you break through that barrier, as they call it mental floss in some circles, where it's like where you think your limit is not even close to where your limit is. So when you get to the compound movement, after the pre-exhaust, quote, isolation movements, you're going to find that you're going to be pretty fatigued after like 3 or 4 reps, but you're going to keep going because that's what you're used to. So we're using habituation of what you're used to training with compound movements as a way to get you out of the habituation of how much fatigue you're using in your muscles. So all you do is you take that tension chain and you just break it up and do the single joint stuff first. So with pull chain, I usually give rear flies, bicep curls, and lat pull downs. With the squat chain, I'll give someone hamstring curls and sissy squats beforehand. And then you go and you blast the hell out of them with a compound squatting movement. It's not very complicated to do, works primarily with the push or with the movement chains, push, pull, and squat. I don't use it a whole heck of a lot with the support chains because basically the support chain is always used as a complete unit. You don't really break that one up. So it's good for the movement chains. And if you feel like you're in a rut, especially with the order of the programming of your exercises, give that pre-exhaust strategy a try, and it's going to light some things up for you. It's going to be very, very effective. Got my spring water here. It's been an interesting experiment. I'm kind of on this kick now of breaking a lot of old habits over the past several months. And one of the habits that has recently fallen down and been destroyed is my old habit of diet sodas. Although, to be perfectly honest, like now you've got these carbonated, seltzer waters that are flavored. And I'm like, well, what in the world would possibly be the difference? Like diet soda is basically water, carbonated water with food coloring and artificial flavoring. In seltzer water, that's like lemon seltzer water. It's like carbonated water with artificial flavoring, and there's no food coloring. Maybe that's the one thing that's different. But they're like, no, it's just water. I'm like, but it's sweet. So it's not water. Like there's something added to it. So I don't know. I'm a little skeptical. I wouldn't exactly call it water. I still think it's diet soda because it basically is still the same experience. But I don't know. Maybe I'm off on that. Maybe I need to do some more. If people have insight on that, let me know in the comments section. But yeah, no more diet sodas for me for the foreseeable future, which is it hasn't been hard, it hasn't been challenging, but on the other hand, it hasn't really done anything for me either. Like my weight's the same, my energy's the same, my health is like, it hasn't done anything because diet soda is basically just carbonated water anyway. But yeah, it's just interesting to not have the dependence anymore. Ash Moore coming on. Matt, I've been following you for about 4 years. Holy smokes, I'm surprised you could stand the sound of my voice for that long. Thank you very much, my friend. It's much appreciated. You're solely responsible for me having an incredible body. Not at all, my friend. Remember, it's 99.9% your work and effort. I'm just giving you some ideas you can work off of. The ladies love me, and I love you, man. Glad to hear it, Ash. Glad to hear it. Nothing wrong with looking and feeling better, especially for a little of the attraction of, well, I was going to say the opposite sex or whoever you're trying to attract. It's always a good benefit of this type of stuff. Albert's coming on. Hey, Matt, love your channel. I did L-sit archer pull-ups the other day on rings. Very challenging, of course. Oh, yeah, definitely, especially if you're doing it strictly physics-wise, body mechanics. What makes the L-sit pull-ups significantly harder than regular pull-ups? That, my friend, is all about the physics of where your weight distribution is. Okay, so when you do a regular pull-up, right, your ability to stabilize your body depends on how much of you is in front of your hands. A friend of mine who was a stuntman in Hollywood used to swear by this exercise. He's like, dude, it makes my entire body really, really tough. And because when you do a pull-up, of course, you'll notice that something has to go in front of you. Because when you pull up, of course, your hands, for the most part, are somewhat in front of you. Even if you're like, I'm doing a wide grip pull-up, it's still, your hands are in front of you. So your center of gravity is behind your hands. So in order for you to balance out, something's got to go forwards, right? Now, usually that means the body's tilting backwards, or we've got a little bit of a hinge in our hips, as I like to prefer, so my body can stay upright. And that's your typical pull-up. But when you do an L-sit style and your legs are out, one, you're using a lot of energy in order to maintain that position because your abs are going crazy. But two, you're also working your legs, now that I think about it too. But you've got so much weight in front of you that your back has to work exponentially harder in order to maintain that balance. Because otherwise, your legs are going to be dipping down. So what ends up happening is you need further activation of your lats and your shoulder extension in order to keep your hips underneath your shoulders. If you ever do this on a dip bars, like get on dip bars, hold yourself up and extend your legs out, like on parallettes or something, you'll notice that your whole body wants to tip forward. Your hips want to go behind your hands, which is what usually happens. But if you engage your lats a lot more, you can push your hips forward. Now, that's something that you should be doing when you're doing it on parallettes or dip bars or something. But when you're doing it on pull-ups, you absolutely have to make that happen in order to do an actual pull-up. So the demand on your lats especially increases, not so much to pull you up, but also to stabilize the body because you have more of your weight in front of you. That's the physics reason behind it and everything like that. Hopefully that made sense. I should maybe make a video on that to explain it a little better. Dave, good to see you. Hey, Matt, what do you put recovery in hypertrophy hierarchy? Okay, so this is a very good question. So keep in mind that we don't build muscle from recovery. That's the old way of thinking about it, right? The old way we thought the process worked was you stress the body and then you have recovery and you get the real results with recovery. It's actually not the way I believe it works anymore, because you can stress your body to death every single time and have recovery and still go nowhere. Happens all the time, happens for me for years. And that has led me to believe, no, it's not stress and recovery, it's stimulus and adaptation. And the stimulus happens during the workout, and the adaptation happens during the recovery. But we want to be very, very clear about what we're going after, because if you still adhere to this stress and recovery aspect of things, then you're just going to have the goal of driving yourself into the ground, regardless of whether or not it's actually doing anything. And then your recovery, you're like, well, okay, how much recovery do I need? You go down rabbit holes on the internet. You got to recover for 48 hours. You got to recover for a week, whatever the case may be. But remember that the amount of time you need for recovery is so subjective to so many other variables. How hard you push into the red zone of failure, how much volume you have, diet, sleep, genetics, your workout capacity. Some people can do a lot of work and be ready to go the next day. Other people, they need a lot more time to recover, whether or not you've done something new. For example, like, you do some heavy leg work after not doing any leg work for a while, legs are super sore, you're going to need more recovery. But if you're like, oh yeah, I squat all the time, I love training legs, you hit your legs, you're probably going to be ready to go a lot sooner just because of that repeat bout effect. So to answer your question, Dave, is recovery is just whenever you're not training, whenever you're not doing a workout. That's when you're allowing the adaptation to occur, which most of it, of course, occurs during sleep. That's when most of our recovery happens. That's when most of our adaptation happens as well. But it's just when you're not working the chain. And as someone myself who works on a freestyle approach to training, I hit the muscle and then I just give it whatever time it needs until I feel I can hit it again. I don't have a set amount of time that I adhere to because there's so many other variables to it that I just hit it when I can hit it again. And maybe that's 2 days later, maybe it's a week later, right? It always depends on a number of things. So it's just when you're not training, that's when your recovery and AKA your adaptation is happening. Okay, well, let's get one more here and then I'll go into the second program here. SJ, hey Matt, have you seen J-Flex cross grips, portable pull-up handles? I think those are the ones that are very similar to the duonomic handles. Basically, they clamp onto the doorway like thing. If that's what I'm thinking of. No, I've seen them. I just haven't used them. But I mean, it's a pretty simple concept. It's just got to clamp onto the doorway and hold your weight. If it does that, great, good product kind of thing. It's kind of like ski bindings. I always wondered why in the world companies make, different ski bindings every year. Like, these ski bindings are awesome. I'm like, they just got to hold your boot to the ski and pop the ski off when you crash. That's it. They've always done that. How are you going to make it better than that? How are you going to improve upon that? There's nothing else that it needs to do. Same thing with like the duonomic handles and the J grips and stuff. It's like, it's just got to clamp on and hold. And that's it. Then the actual exercise is up to you, of course. Simple jobs. So you've got one job or you got two jobs. That's all you got to do. All right. So we got the pre-exhaust method. Now, another one that I really like to use is, of course, drop sets. So drop sets are where, of course, you have exercise with a relatively high level of intensity that you start off with, something you can get 5 to 8 reps, let's say, for example. And then you hit the point where you're like, I can't do more reps. And instead of stopping and then resting, you stop and you immediately go to a lighter resistance so you can keep going. This is one of the reasons why I always tell people, get that idea of going to failure out of your head, because muscle failure is so subjective. We think it's this very clear, objective, definitive thing. It is totally not, because part of it is because your muscular failure depends entirely upon the exact circumstances of the exercise. You change something about that exercise, you're no longer at failure. And one of the things is how much resistance you have. So you could be doing, for example, a heavy weighted dip with like 50 pounds. You're like, I can't do anymore. Good. Put your feet down, drop the dip belt. Good. Now you got body weight and you keep going. Your muscles are still capable of more work. It's just not more work at that level. So a drop set is anything where you're doing the exercise continuously, but with lower levels of resistance. Now, when you're working with weight, that's very obvious because you just lift lighter weight and you just keep going until you can't go. And then you drop the weight and you keep going and so on. But the way you do it with calisthenics is you just regress the exercise. And one of the best ways that I like to do with this is use a 2-step regression for the following ways. For push chain is I'll have someone go with dips and then into push-ups, and then maybe one more level of regressed push-ups. So for example, you've got your dips, and then they'll get like, say, 8 dips, and bang, right on the ground. Or you could do something fun like what a friend of mine and I used to do, where we would be doing dips. We had a playground, and the dip bars were relatively low. So we'd do dips, and you're like, okay, that's all I got. And then we'd swing our legs back, and the person would catch our legs. So we're holding ourselves out into a push-up position on the very dip bars, and then we crank out push-ups on the dip bars. We wouldn't even get down on the ground and waste time doing that. We'd also do the same thing with pull-ups and rows. So we'd be doing pull-ups on the pull-up bar, and then we'd kick our legs up, and they'd catch our legs up high, and we do rows on the pull-up bar. And that's a fantastic drop set in the calisthenics world. Works extremely well. Legs, it's a little bit more tricky. So what I usually do is I'll go with a hard, heavy squatting motion, like a weighted pistol squat, for example. And of course, it's not quite as quick as subjecting the muscle to a reduced level of resistance, because, you know, let's say you get 10 on one weighted pistol squat, then you get 10 on the other leg, but the original leg is now resting. That's perfectly fine. This still works okay. And then you go into a jump format exercise, like jump lunges or jump squats. Oh, burns out the legs like nothing else. Really good for ski conditioning as well. But the bottom line is you're starting off heavy, and then you're using a lighter exercise that you can continue and really drive that muscle down. Now, usually I find 2 to 3 levels is sufficient. I know a lot of people with drop sets, they'll drop it down like 5, 6, 7 levels. At some point, you're just going to go light enough that you can just keep going. You just keep going and stuff, and you're not bringing the muscle to a higher state of fatigue. So I usually tell people, stop well before that. You want to feel like you're just kind of juicing out the muscle as quickly as possible. And so having 2 to 3 levels typically is a good one, but use your best judgment. Some people, they'll do dips, or they'll do like weighted dips, then bodyweight dips, then push-ups, then knee push-ups, and then even push-ups on like, you know, an incline, like a countertop or something. It's like, dude, if you're still really burning out the muscle, go for it. But you're typically getting to a point where the muscle is just like, you're just going through the motions at this point. But drop sets can work very well. And one of the things I like about the drop set is you get to start heavy. And this is a common theme with all of these exercises, is you start heavy, so you ensure you're getting a lot of intensity for that muscle, a lot of tension, but then you're also creating a high state of fatigue later on at the same time. And if there's anything that's going to ensure that you're getting that 1-2 punch for strength and muscle building, it's that type of a strategy, which I've got more coming up, but let me get to some more of these questions. Aiden and Ben, hey man, how you doing? Cold weather at your end? Not too bad. No, here in Denver, it's probably like at night it's chilly. You see me with the hoodie on and stuff. It's in the 50s at night for sure, 40s maybe. So you walk out the front door and you're like, ooh, it's chilly. But at the same time, it'll still get up in the 70s here during the day. So you've got to really plan your wardrobe. It's like I leave the house, you know, with a hoodie and mittens and gloves, and by the end of the day, I'm in a t-shirt and shorts again. Ashmore saying, hey, my actual question, I haven't been able to get past 5 pull-ups in a set. I can do 3 sets of that. Okay, although my form has gotten better, what do you think is a mental block? So I would bet dollars to donuts it's your shoulder stability more than anything else. That's always kind of the limiting factor for a lot of folks when it comes to upper body training, especially with pull-ups. The thing I would really ask about is how much are your lats working? Lat activation is one of those things that is just chronically subpar in a lot of people. So if you don't feel like your lats, the whole lat on your back is lighting up like a Christmas tree on each repetition, you have a lot of muscle that's just not playing its role as it should in the exercise. So I would recommend warming up with a lot of scapular pull-ups. And remember that when you do a pull-up, you want to feel like you're pack and pull. So drop those shoulders down as aggressively and hard as possible, and then pull with your arms. And that's probably going to make a pretty good difference. And yeah, there could be a mental block to it because, again, habituation takes its toll, where if you're always used to gassing out around 3 or 4 repetitions, you need to get around that somehow. A lot of times people will, well, it's kind of hard when you're at that low, but sometimes when people have trouble getting over like 10 to 12 reps, people will say, just stop counting. Because we're used to thinking to ourselves, oh, 8 reps, 9 reps. Oh, I must be getting close to my limit. But you stop counting and you just keep going. You're like, what am I at? And the instructor's like 15. They're like, dear Lord. So sometimes it is a mental block. And we just got to realize that, no, I'm not doing this. Sometimes the simplest thing that I'll do with clients is they'll be like, okay, all I can do are, 8 dips. I'm like, okay, I want 15. And they look at me like, are you insane? Like maybe on a good day, I'll get 10. I'm like, nope, give me 15. And they'll like get through it and they'll kind of struggle, but they might get like 12. And they're like, see, I didn't get 15. I'm like, yeah, but you got 12. Whereas you thought you could get 8. So it just reframes where they think that limitation is. Where you think you're done, you're not really done. And the last thing I would recommend is just keep going, but just get shorter reps. It's perfectly fine. Remember, a lot of times when we get additional reps, they're not the prettiest reps. They're kind of ugly. They may not be the best range, and that's perfectly fine. So force yourself to get you got 4 real good reps, and the 5th one's not quite over the bar with the chin, and then you've got like a 6th, which is a half rep, and then the 7th one is barely a rep at all. Good. 7 reps. But be aware of your range, and then you go to 7 reps and you just increase the range of motion. Because remember, when we are trying to improve how many reps we can do, a lot of that is about improving the reps we can already do with technique and range and things like that. And as those get better, then your reps will go up. One more here. Dave is asking, hey, Matt, with the other thing with the L-sit pull-ups being harder, that the lats are always a little stretched. Also with the pull-up grip, how do you keep from pinching your calluses? Good questions here. So the first one, I think your lats are less stretched actually, because if you notice when you have your legs out in front of you, you're going to have a little bit more flexion at the bottom of your pull-up when your shoulder flexion at the bottom of your pull-up. If you go a complete dead hang, you're just going to, your legs are going to plop down and you're going to tilt forward. Maybe you're doing that with the L-sit pull-up. I've known people to do that, but typically people keep their legs locked out. So if you do that, you're typically using less range of motion in the shoulders. Not a lot less, but just enough less that you're probably getting less range in your lats with that L-sit pull-up. And also, how do you keep from pinching your calluses? First and foremost is make sure you're not gripping too low on your hand. So if I'm here, right, on the bar, and I close my fist, I've got all that meat in my palm getting pinched. So if I've got the bar more on my knuckle and I'm grabbing more of my fingers or just below it, then you're not going to have nearly as much of the skin of your palm getting pinched. And that's usually the best way to go about that as well. And also keep those calluses shaved down too, because if they're really thick, they're just going to constantly be getting in the way. And I just use a simple like shaving razor blade, and I just kind of run over the callus a few times. Or if you're near something rough, like some exercise equipment has a really rough texture, I'll just rub it like sandpaper on the machine for a while and just kind of file them down a little bit that way. And that can help too, quite a bit. All right. So we've got pre-exhaust, we've got our drop sets. Another one that I really like is the strength and finisher phase. It's very, very similar to what I just talked about with drop sets and things like that. And it's the strategy used in the grind style calisthenics approach, of course, but it's a little bit different because what you do with this is you have a phase in your workout where you're going heavy first. So you're using a lot of resistance. And again, usually with GSC, I'm like, keep the reps around 5 or 6, maybe 8 if you're feeling like you want a little bit more volume. Personally, a lot of times I'll do things around 3 if I'm really kind of feeling my oats. You want that high level of tension to be training your strength. And you do that as long as you can continue to produce that level of tension. Maybe it's 2 sets, maybe it's 5 sets. I always tell people, remember, strength is a skill. You're practicing strength. And with all sorts of practice, my approach that I always recommend is keep practicing as long as the practice is good. Don't adhere to any sort of dogmatic set scheme, because I could say do 2 sets and you'd be like, but I'm really feeling good today. And after 2 sets, I'm feeling awesome. Well, keep going. Don't stop. If you can get in good quality practice, keep going. But sometimes you also have those days where you're like, I got in 2 decent sets, but man, a third one, the form is going down. I got like 1 rep. It's not really feeling that great. It's like, good. Okay, move on. Like, don't keep beating a dead horse to death here. There's no sense in that. So you do the hard and heavy stuff first. You get that out of the way in the workout. Then what you do is you take a much easier variant or a weight of that. And I usually recommend a very different exercise with this. So if you're doing pull-ups, do like single arm rows, for example. If you were doing, like in the example, squats, do a jumping technique, like jump lunges or something. Make it a very different exercise, because when the movement pattern and what you're doing is so similar, you're not creating that much more of a different stimulus in the muscle. If you're going to do another exercise in the workout for the tension chain, make it pretty different, so that way you get more value out of it. So again, the classic example of if I'm doing weighted pull-ups and then for my finisher, I've got single arm rows at like a 45-degree angle, I'm changing my angle. I'm changing from vertical to horizontal. I'm going from bilateral to unilateral. I'm going to increase the speed. So I'm going at a faster tempo. I'm going to use rotation. There's so many new things coming in there, but I'm still working the same muscles. I'm still working the same tension chain. So you're getting much more out of the workout versus if you were doing, for example, pull-ups, and then for a finisher, you did like band-assisted pull-ups. Yeah, it's lighter, like doing a drop set, which is great if you're doing it right afterwards. But typically when you're using a strength and then finisher phase of things, it's not as immediate as a drop set. So I recommend use a totally different exercise. That way you're getting more out of it as well. So it's just literally as it sounds, is do the strength stuff and just keep going with just the strength stuff. Don't do the finishers yet. Stay on the strength stuff until you're no longer feeling very strong at the exercise. And you're not going to failure either on those. Remember, you're trying to practice. Fatigue is the enemy of skill when it comes to practice. So if I'm doing, for example, my commando pull-ups for sets of 3, I could probably eke out 4, maybe 5 reps. So when I'm done with 3, it's like, boom. But it's not failure by any means. So that way I can get in more sets of that and practice that strength. And then when I'm like, okay, I got, I was getting sets of 3 regularly. Now, boy, it's pretty fast. Like I grab onto the bar and I start to pull up and my muscles are like, no, done. Wave the white flag. We're finished here. It's like, okay, good. And then I'll go and I'll get my like single arm rows and just blast it out. Typically finishing phases, again, with GSC and stuff, I usually say 1 or 2 sets. You don't want to be like, I got 5 sets of finishers. You're not pushing it that hard if you're getting 5 sets. You're just not, or you're doing a lot of rest, right? You're trying to just burn the hell out of the muscle 1 or 2 times and then call it a day with that one there. Here, it's getting a little dark. Let me move the light in over here a little bit. See if you can't see me a little better. Me and my beautiful face here. SJ is asking pull-up bar versus suspension rows for longevity. Oh, suspension rows all day long. Just because you have so much more flexibility. You can twist, you can rotate, you can move your hands a little bit easier when it comes to the position of your hands. Even little things. God, I feel like I'm going to be on the twilight zone here. It's amazing how fast it gets dark these days, but it's so much better for the joints and stuff. Definitely the suspension rows or rings or something. I mean, rings are suspension training. Let's not kid ourselves here. It's basically the same thing fundamentally. Drop Weight Daddy, my man Michael, is asking, hey Matt, what book writing software do you recommend to use? It's simple. I just use Google Docs. I use Google Docs for most of my writing. Some of the stuff I need to produce through Word in order for it to look okay on the Kindles and stuff. So I'll take from Google Docs and put it into Word, and I'll just get the formatting correct a little bit. But yeah, for the most part, I do just use Google Docs. That way I can write stuff on my phone and voice dictation and all that sort of thing. So it's just simple there. It's nothing complicated. Excuse me, Mariano, it's good to see you, my friend. Hey, Matt, lately I use the drag curl in both overcoming isometrics and dynamics for biceps. Oh, I love that exercise. Such a great exercise. I feel that is more like the natural movement of lifting a weight as in front of my body. What do you think? Absolutely. In fact, I'm pretty much to the point where I'm like, I don't do traditional curls anymore with clients. It's all drag curls. But the biggest reason is because, once again, like with the pull-ups when I was talking about, when you've got weight out in front of you, you've got to counterbalance and you've got so much work in order to manage this shift in your center of gravity. Now, a drag curl, when you pull up, you're keeping your hands right alongside right in front of your body. So if you had a barbell, in front of you doing a drag curl with barbells, you would just be running that barbell straight up the front side of your body and letting your elbows move around however they want. So it keeps your center of gravity so much more comfortable. You're much more in control. It's a hell of a lot harder on the biceps, which is why a lot of people don't like it, because you can't lift nearly as much weight or as much reps as you would with, a normal curl, and maybe you get a little cheek curl and stuff in there. Drag curls are a weaker exercise, but you know me, I love weaker exercises. I do things the hard way, as I always tell my clients. I don't want to do an easy exercise. Anytime you give me an exercise and you're like, but if you did it that way, you can't do as many reps. You can't lift as much weight. Great, sign me up. I don't want to do things the easy way. I want to do things a hard way, because it's a hell of a lot easier to create an effective stimulus for building muscle and strength when you do harder exercises. And the drag curl is certainly one of them. It's better on the joints, easier to manage, harder on the muscles, easier for that type of drive upwards as well. Oh, it's just, yeah, drag curls all day long. Not to say the other curls are bad or anything, but boy, if I have the choice, I'm doing drag curls for sure. All right. So we got pre-exhaust, we got our drop sets, we got the strength and finisher phase workouts like we do in grind style calisthenics. And now we also have a couple of other classics here. Now, one of the best things that I like, God, it's getting so dark. This is crazy. Here, let me try and turn on some lights here, folks. Sorry about this. Let me unclip here and get some actual lights on. Yeah, that did almost nothing. that did not do very much, I'll tell you that much. But sorry to be in your ears here with the microphone, but I guess that's a little bit better. It's like you wouldn't even know I turned on a light here. But yeah, it's so we got those. Now, one of the tried and true, whenever someone comes to me and they're like, oh, my workouts, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what to do. Is it this, is it that? And I can't seem to get, like, okay, time out, everything stop, 5x5. 5x5 is just one of those workouts that just always seems to work. It's heavy. It's a decent amount of volume. It's really good for, of course, the basic compound movements that you're using. So again, you're not going to do this with leg raises or kettlebell swings or something like that. You do it with heavy compound movements, pull-ups, dips, push-ups, squats, deadlifts if you're lifting weight, that sort of thing. But it's just one of those things that just works, and it's just really reliable. I wouldn't do it all the time, but whenever someone's kind of like, I'm confused, I don't know where to go, workouts are feeling stale, boom, 5x5 is real easy, because it's 5 sets of 5 repetitions. Particularly handy for those who are typically higher volume or higher reps in their sets. So I know if they're like usually getting 15, 20 reps, drop into a much higher level of resistance, so they're getting 5 reps, is going to certainly create a bit of a shock to the muscles, that's for sure. And 5 sets is a good amount of volume. It's 25 total repetitions, but it's not like German volume training where you're driving yourself into the ground either. So the best ways to do this is think of it this way. The first 2 sets are a not so much warm up, but it's a moderate level of intensity of volume. So heavy weight, you're finishing it where you're getting like, I got 5, but I could probably get 8, maybe 6 or 7 or so. The middle set, set number 3, that's where you're like, well, 5, could have gotten 6 repetitions. And then those last 2, I tell people, I was like, you should be struggling to get 5. You get 5 for sure. Don't be like struggling to get 3. But those last 2 sets using enough weight and everything where you have a real hard challenge getting that 5 repetitions. That's going to create a good amount of fatigue. It's going to be very nice and heavy. It's going to give you a bit more of an awareness of how to manage fatigue throughout the workout. And it's short enough that it's really not going to take a whole lot of time either. So 5x5 is just one of those things that tried and true. It just always seems to work. It's good volume. It's good strength. It's really, really hard to mess that one up as long as you've got the intensity dialed in. I've known some people to get 5x5 and they're like, I did 5x5, it did nothing. And then I watch what they're doing and I'm like, okay, in this first one, don't get 5, give me what you can. And they get like 15 reps. I'm like, no, it's way too easy, way too light. Not that much as far as level of resistance goes. You need a lot more because you are training heavy throughout the entire thing. It's kind of like you go heavy and then you go moderate, pretty heavy, and you go really heavy on the last 2 there kind of thing. Dan, hey, it's good to see you, Dan. It's awesome. Hey, Matt, what about sliding workouts for muscle building? Can you elaborate on that, Dan? Because I've got like 5 different ideas on what a sliding workout might be. So please do elaborate in the comments here of what you mean by a sliding workout. Sapling is asking, hey, Matt, while doing oblique crunches on a 45-degree hyper machine, would you say to do a full bend crunch at the top or maintain a neutral spine at the top position? So I wouldn't necessarily go on the 45 for that because you're working at a much lighter level of resistance. Instead, what I would go with is more of a 45 oblique crunch with leg raises instead. You're going to get a much bigger range of motion in your lumbar spine and your pelvis. And that's what you're limited here with, because you're asking full bend or crunch at the top or maintain a neutral spine at the top position. On that machine, I think you're kind of losing a lot on either of those. Because if you keep a neutral spine, you're not getting much of that flexion in your lumbar spine. You're not getting much range in the muscle. And if you do have flexion, then you're coming up to the point where you're going to be losing resistance. So you're kind of losing out on either of those on the 45-degree hyper. So that's why I'm suggesting do more of the oblique crunch aspect on something where you're getting full resistance through the full range of motion. So that's hanging, twisting leg raises, or one of the things I like to do is you do the knee tucks on a suspension trainer where you tuck your knees, but you're twisting at the same time with your feet suspended. The twisting ab rollouts work particularly well for that. And of course, my go-to for obliques is just simply side plank work. You have a hand suspended or foot suspended side plank work, typically a lot more effective and easier on the spine as well. But yeah, it's not a bad exercise to do it on the 45. I think you're just leaving a lot on the table with that. I think you're going to be losing either way with that one. And Adnan is asking again, for some reason, I don't really feel the burn in the quads from doing sissy squats. Oh, that's a problem. The sissy squats should make you feel like your quads are getting bathed in battery acid, my friend. Perhaps something wrong with my execution. Absolutely. I love sissy squats because they are one of the most direct, most effective quad focused exercises, bar none. I mean, I will take those as a quad focused exercise over machine leg extensions, over bands, over anything else out there. They are brutal and they are awesome and they're really easy to manage. But I bet you anything what's going on is you're kicking your hips back, because with the sissy squat, the position of your hips relative to your heels is very much a factor in your resistance level. So what ends up happening is, if you're like, I often tell people, start at the bottom of the sissy squat position. So you're on your toes, you put your knees on the floor in front of you, and you want to feel like you're pushing your hips forward. You're keeping your glutes and your hamstrings tight. That protects the knees. Sissy squats shouldn't be any more stressful on your knees than walking if you do them correctly. And you want to lean back a little bit, potentially. You should feel a bit of a stretch in your hips. Now, here's the trick, is when you stand back up, you want to feel like you're still pushing your hips up and forward. Feel like, God, I don't know how to quite do this without getting crass, but imagine you're literally trying to just push your groin up and forward as you come forward with your glutes and your hamstrings. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a better way to visualize it, but yeah, it literally is that. You're pushing your hips forward as you drive upwards and you're leaning backwards. This is why I always recommend having your hands on something so you don't have to work on balance and stability. And that should significantly increase the resistance. And you can try this too. You come up a little bit and then just bring your hips backwards, like you're sticking your butt behind you, just even a few inches, and you'll feel that resistance disappear, which makes it a really good get out of jail option if you are fatigued and you're like, oh no, I'm stuck. You just kick your hips back, boom, and it's easy as pie. I bet that's what's probably going on. All right, let's see what else. Let's get to one more. Dan is following up here. I mean, using sliding movements as sliding hamstring curls, sliding chest flies. Oh, yeah, that's what I thought you meant, like sliding on the floor, but I didn't know if there was like a sliding method of progression or something. So, yeah, I like sliding a lot. You just have to get the surface right because I cover a couple sliding movements in my latest book, Progressive and Weighted Calisthenics, because that's the progressive calisthenics. But in all honesty, I'm going with suspension straps for those movements almost every time. Maybe I don't have anything hanging or something. I've got a good, nice hard floor. Then yeah, hamstring curls and chest flies and stuff are really good. We used to do this on like the slide boards at E3, one of the gyms I coached at, where you had the old skater slide boards. We do chest flies and stuff. It's good. It's really good. It's also a really good way to manage how much weight is on your hands versus the other supportive limbs and stuff like that. But yeah, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to go with suspension straps just because it's so much easier to manage and there's no friction at all. The whole point of sliding exercises is to reduce friction. Sometimes you want the friction, but the friction is good one way, bad the other kind of thing. But with doing chest flies and stuff on like rings and stuff, you're just no friction at all. And I think it's just a better way to go about it. Sliding is like a secondary exercise. Do that if you particularly like it. If you came to me and you're like, I love doing sliding chest flies, I hate it on the suspension straps. Okay, then great. We'll do it on the floor. A lot of times we should base things off of personal preference. But yeah, I'm not going to go with the sliding over the strap versions if I can help it. Okay, let's see. We've covered 4. We've covered pre-exhaust, strength and finisher, 5x5, drop sets. One more to go here. Muscle building workouts that just simply work. And this is the quote, pause, rest style training. This goes by a lot of different names. I've heard some people say, what do you think about this type of training? It's like, Shamupi training or whatever. It's like some guy thinks he's reinvented the wheel and names it after his dog or something. It's like, it's called Shanupi training. It's the same thing. Basically, you take a weight, a fairly good level of resistance, right? And you go through the set as you normally would. You just can get 8 pull-ups. Okay, great, wonderful. You get 8 pull-ups, you drop down. Now you don't go and do your typical rest where it's like, okay, you start scrolling through social media, flirt with the front desk girl, you get a drink, you go to the bathroom, several minutes later, you go do your next set. No, you do your set, 8 pull-ups, very good. Drop down, a couple deep breaths, and you're back up and you try and get another rep or 2. And then you drop down and you just kind of shake out 1, 2, 3, and you go for another rep or 2 and stuff. And the reason why I like this one is because, as I was mentioning earlier, is that this idea of pushing to muscular failure is very much subjective. What we think is our limit usually isn't. So what this helps you do is recognize that you can keep pushing because it gives you a little bit of rest, but it's usually not enough to really do anything. So you stop, you rest, you take a couple deep breaths and you keep going. And it's a lot easier to keep pushing into that red zone that you would have otherwise a hard time achieving or having access to. Meanwhile, you're still using a fairly good amount of weight with the regular set. So your amount of tension is still fairly high as well. So once again, we've got the strength and the fatigue really being bumped up. So you're getting the best of both worlds. So it's really as simple as that. Make sure you've got a good spotter or something. If you're doing it on bench press or something, this is one of the things I love about, of course, progressive calisthenics is that it's one of those things that is fairly safe relatively. You don't need a spotter, but it is something you can get stuck underneath. It's like, okay, here I go for a bench press. I know I got one more rep, and then you don't have the rep, and you're like, uh-oh, now I'm stuck. So do be safe with this sort of thing. It's one of those things that you want to be mindful of. A couple of last questions here before letting you folks go. Thank you so much for coming on here late on a Saturday. I know this was a later episode here, but I really didn't want to give you another solo cast like I did last week, even though that was a really good episode where you get your podcast. But I will let you enjoy your Saturdays here. A couple last ones. William is asking, so I'm 65 and do perfect reps on dips and chins. What can I add for aesthetics for the medial delt? Don't worry about it. So this whole idea of medial delt is largely a waste of time in most circles. I've never known a single person who built good shoulders focusing on the medial delt. I've never seen it happen because no one ever builds the front and the back and the medial is totally atrophied. Okay. Use your whole shoulder in everything that you're doing. Every upper body exercise should be a complete and full shoulder exercise. Use the entire shoulder for everything that you're using. If you're not doing any sort of overhead style, pike push-ups or anything like that, maybe invest in a little bit of that activity in your workouts because that can help to spark up a little bit of shoulder action. But yeah, this whole idea of like, well, I got the front of the shoulder working, but the medial is not working. That's not at all how the body works. It's an idea that came about from like bodybuilding culture where they're like, I need at least another 1 or 2 millimeters in the medial delt. Maybe that'll make a difference. But for normal general Joe Schmoes like us, we won't notice anything. Even if I could give you an exercise, it probably wouldn't do anything aside from what you're already getting. So get some more overhead pressing kind of things. But for the most part, don't worry about, is this front, back, side, medial delt? Don't worry about it. It's the same thing. Again, a lot of people get with like, what do I do to work my upper chest? Push-ups. What about my lower chest? Push-ups. What about my inner chest? Push-ups. Like, use your whole chest on everything. Remember, integrate, don't isolate. All right. Very good. Lexicon is real quick saying, I always enjoy your shorts. Good stuff. Thank you. I wear them well these days. No, I know what you mean. Yes, I've been putting a lot more of the shorts content on the RDP Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. We're now on TikTok. I haven't even mentioned that to people, but if you're on TikTok, find me on TikTok, Red Delta Project. And I like making the shorts because a lot of times the information we really need for a basic idea, because I always say the internet's a terrible place to find solutions, but it's a really good place to find information and ideas. That's really all I can do. Like I was saying earlier, when the gentleman was like, oh, you've really helped me. I'm like, I didn't do anything but give you some ideas, dude. That's all I can do. As an influencer here on YouTube and everything like that, I can't tell you what you need to do. I don't really know what solutions you need. That's up to you. You have to figure that stuff out and put the puzzle together a little bit more for yourself. If I'm coaching you one-on-one, I can be a lot more of a help you find the pieces. But in fitness, we're always building our own puzzle. We have to solve our own puzzles. No one else can do it for us. And if we're looking at the internet or social media saying, tell me everything I need to do, you're always going to be looking because there's no way in hell you're going to get that off of the internet, especially in shorts. Our attention span is getting shorter and shorter and shorter these days. I remember back in the day, I used to make YouTube videos that were 15 minutes long. Nobody complained. And then after a while, people were like, this is 15 minutes long. It needs to be shorter. Then it got 10 minutes, 5 minutes. A lot of my long form content now on YouTube is less than 4 minutes long. And people still complain. It's like, oh my God, this took forever to get through. I'm like, it was literally like 2.5 minutes. Are you kidding me? It's because our attention span is getting so much shorter because we're just scrolling mindlessly through and you can't get someone's attention in the first. It used to be 15 seconds. Now it's got to be in the first half a second. Then they're gone. So we're using shorter form information because that's all I got to do is just give you an idea. Here's something to think about. Now go and apply. And that's where you're going to get the real information you need. The real stuff you need and how do I lose weight? How do I build muscle? What do I do is take that information I just gave you, these workouts, because you're not going to learn anything through this podcast. You're going to get the ideas of drop sets, pause rep training, strength and finisher phases. You're going to get those ideas. But right now, I guarantee you, they're not doing anything for you. It's completely worthless. But if you could take one of those ideas and apply it in your next workout, that's going to give you the information you really need to know. And that's what's going to make the biggest difference. So please don't just listen to my podcast. Don't watch my shorts on YouTube and just be like, okay, that's neat, and then do nothing. Because always remember, all the information in the world and data you collect is nothing more than trivial entertainment if it doesn't get you making better decisions and taking better actions. It's like all this, Fitbits and Apple Watches and data and stuff. I've got some clients, they literally have like 2 devices on their hands and wrists collecting data. And I was like, okay, according to that data, what are you doing differently this week? And of course, 9 times out of 10, they're like, what do you mean? It's like data is worthless unless you're using it to make better decisions. Otherwise, it's just entertainment or making sure you're on track, which still has its value as well. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I put out shorts all the time. They're a lot of fun for me to make, but I do put those out because I want to give you an idea on how you can take better actions or have a better perspective with your diet and exercise. And that's what's going to really make the difference for you and get what you want out of these sort of things. Speaking of my shorts, Dave is asking, is Enzo going to make any more appearances? I just put up a micro workout this past week on my shorts of a great abdominal workout. And of course, as soon as I hit record, one of my kitty cats, Enzo, decided to just walk in front of the camera and plop right down in the foreground. I'm like, well, I guess I'm making this video with my cat. So probably anytime I'm on the ground, Enzo comes around like, oh, it's cuddle time. All right, one more here. Joseph Bello saying, hello, Matt. I have a problem building my chest muscles. Do you think a combination of different push-ups in progressive calisthenics can work? It can, absolutely. But the first thing I always go with whenever someone has trouble building up a muscle, and I should preface this with everything I've given you right now, these workouts can create a good stimulus for building muscle, but it depends entirely on what you bring to these workouts. There's nothing special about drop sets, pre-exhaust, 5x5 or anything like that. It's just a template. It's all about, do you bring the right ingredients to the workouts? And one of those things, of course, that I'm always talking about is neuromuscular proficiency, muscle activation. How well are you using your chest muscles in your workouts? I cover this at length in my book, Overcoming Isometrics. Cheap plug, yes, it's down below in the links. Because your ability to effectively strengthen and train a muscle for anything, size and strength especially, is built upon the foundation of how well you can engage it and the degree you can engage it in the first place. And if you have trouble engaging your chest, nothing you do will ever work, ever. You could do every push-up variation. You could work yourself into the ground, do push-ups until you're speaking in tongues and bleeding out of your eyes, and nothing's really going to come of it because the actual neural juice that makes the muscle contract at a harder intensity, it's just not there. It's just bypassing everything and using other muscles. So I would say make sure you are using your chest a lot. And if it's not, use those overcoming isometrics as a warm-up, as we do in grind style calisthenics, to make sure that, quote, mind-muscle connection, as they often call it, is really fired up. Because if you've got good neural connection to your chest, anything you do will work. It's going to be effective, even if you don't change anything about your workouts. That ability to engage the muscle is paramount, folks. All right, everybody, I will let you enjoy your Saturday. I'm going to make me some dinner and stuff, but thank you as always for watching, checking out my stuff. Again, the audio for this will be up on the RDP podcast at your local podcast directory in the next 24 hours or so. And thank you very much for watching and listening. Your comments as well. Don't forget all of the books that supported this episode, including the new progressive and weighted calisthenics book that uses just a simple pull-up bar, is down below in the description. And let me know if you need anything else at the Red Delta Project Instagram channel. Talk to you next week. Till then, be fit and live free.